Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here for this daily medicine transmission for February 5th, 2021. So I posted the weekly astrology. It's a written report that's on medium.com, my blog post or my blog site. So you can access that from the description box down below, and it lays out all the major transits coming up for this week leading up to the new moon. So we're in the last quarter of the lunar cycle of a new moon that started on the 13th of January. And wow, it feels like an entire lifetime has happened since then. So you can check that out. You can link to it from the description box. You can also link to Facebook and Telegram to stay connected on social media. Email. The website is here if you're interested in booking a reading, of course. And then if you feel so called to donate to this work, these transmissions are my offering to the collective. But if you feel called to donate, there is information in the description box in order to do that as well. So welcome. This is the Daily Medicine transmission, and it is going to come swiftly. That is for sure. So we'll get into the intuitive messages here in a little bit. We're going to go over the astrology for today just a little bit. We're finishing up our transit of the moon in Scorpio, and we are, finishing up this really intuitive and very deep, I would say, investigation of ourselves with this moon in Scorpio. And there has been a lot brewing, and we are going to find ourselves, today at some point. Maybe it's already happened for you, as the moon, as you can see here, is in a square to Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, that while we may each individually be experiencing this Phoenix rising type of moment where we have to now learn how to apply this information to our everyday lives, this peak experience, whatever we have learned, whatever truth we have come to unearth or pull up from the depths as a result of this time in Scorpio, whatever it is that has led to this peak experience. The real challenge today is how we are going to not only apply that and assimilate that feeling, right? This is a very deep feeling into our everyday consciousness, but the tension here with Mercury is at the degree where the new moon is going to be in Aquarius, which is about learning to overcome our passions and teach deep wisdom in terms of our experience, okay? Because we do have a strong feeling, and there is a lot of passion, and there's a lot of depth involved in Scorpio. But the aspect of Aquarius that is going to, it's going to define the next lunar cycle is how we overcome that passion in some ways to teach deep wisdom from our experience. And it's a constructive use of difficult past experiences that we can put as examples for those who are still trying to overcome their passions. And so with the Mercury, of course, in retrograde right now, this is more of an internalized process, maybe not quite making itself available to our conscious mind quite yet, but we are still kind of grappling with and feeling this tension when it comes to having had the feeling of these difficult past experiences, or the feeling of the peak experience now being applied to our daily lives. How do we assimilate that into our daily lives in conflict with our ability to communicate and to teach and to provide an example based on those difficult past experiences. So it's just giving us a lot to work with right now, because this new moon will be in this whole new next lunar cycle that starts on the 11th of February. It's also the beginning of the Chinese New Year, which I'll talk about in the new moon report, the year of the metal ox. How do we overcome our passions to teach deep wisdom? The ox is very much like Taurus in the way that it's very there's a lot of determination and there's a lot of hard work and there is a lot of natural and sustained progress with that work that comes about organically and with effort, right? And so we're going to see how that unfolds over the next year, and this next new moon is really going to set the tone, at least for that. So as also we go through the last bit of the moon in Scorpio today is going to be in a sextile with Pluto. Now, keep in mind, as you have to read the astrology report to really get a sense of what to expect. It's going to be a very difficult week leading up to the next lunar cycle in the new moon. The moon is getting darker. It's more elusive in terms of how we feel. There's not clear reflection on these areas. And it's important that we have taken the time to go into these spaces and really get to know ourselves and be very comfortable going through the darkness of the cave, so to speak. So when the moon meets Pluto on the 9th, this is going to be a very, very difficult transit. A lot of buried stuff is going to come out into the open for us to feel very directly. And so this sextile today is giving us this chance to feel what it's like to make adjustments very efficiently, that we can pick up and move to a new location very easily as a result of what we are feeling and learning in that Scorpio realm, because Pluto comes through and just destroys everything in order to make room for transformation. And if we are flexible, if we are fluid, if we are not so attached to how we feel necessarily or what we had felt, then we can move easily through this process, okay? And then the moon today moves into Sagittarius. So we are going to feel a little bit of a lift here. Some optimism, some big picture stuff to look forward to, and specifically a sextile to Venus and Saturn, who are going to be in a conjunction on the 6th. This is, again, a very difficult, potentially difficult transit where there's a lot of potential isolation in our relationships, and everybody's playing a role, and sometimes that can feel very lonely because we don't really everybody's identity is hidden in some ways. Masking is a big and really it's a very prominent archetype right now in the astrology, and I'll point that out as we go along. But masking and unmasking and hiding our identity and a transpersonal responsibility is we can feel kind of alone, and despite our responsibility to everybody playing their part and wearing the mask in order to make this ritual binding, whatever this is. The moon today in a sextile to both of these planets is going to give us a sense and an ability to see the teamwork or the group solidarity that is part of this process. If we can feel that this is about working together for something much bigger than ourselves, then it may not feel nearly as isolating and cold and lonely when this transit becomes exact on Saturday, which is tomorrow. So the moon is also going to be in a trine to Chiron today as well. And love, we start to get a real sense of that's where the yearning and passion really can come from with Sagittarius. This is the alchemical fire, the friction that creates the fire that literally transforms aspects into something new, this is the creative process at work, the transformation and the transmutation of fire and water coming together and creating something new, the opposites of Gemini, right? Gemini is the opposition of Sagittarius. So we are taking these things and actually dissolving them down. And it's the fire under the cauldron, so to speak, that is now hot enough that it melts it all down and we are able to create something new. And alchemize our own feelings. That's really a big part of the moon is how we feel individually in our personal experience. And so there is a lot of projection of our anima or animus at this degree, and in trying to Chiron, that is in fact existing simultaneously in two places at once now, is in this zone of not necessarily anymore asserting this individual aspect of ourselves, but is in a place that is about, bridging the gap and existing at two places at once, right? Because cardinal fire, or Aries, is the current of electricity. And so because it moves so quickly between the poles of opposite, or of positive and negative, that there is a moment here where you do exist in both places at once, because the current is almost simultaneous. And so in the course of traveling that current, you are in the positive and negative, you are in the feminine and masculine, you are in the yin and the yang at the same time. This is a moment. And Chiron, as the wounded healer, and this deep shame that's that we come into life with, we can really, the passion to engage with that which is opposite can really be structurally balanced today in this process of unwinding all of this wounding and this victim mentality. I mean, if you're going to identify as a victim, there's not a lot of room to play both parts necessarily. And so this can really help in this process if we allow it to realize that if we are existing in two places at once, that means we can understand the position that is in fact opposite of us. And there's going to be a deep and very fiery yearning to do this. And this is why I say it's going to come swiftly. And we'll see in the intuitive reading for today, as I give the transmission, the imagery that will really stimulate this particular pathway throughout, not just today, but I think through the weekend, and really as we move through the end of this cycle. Because by the time we get to the new moon, we will be setting intentions for our ability to teach from deep wisdom of experience, rather than necessarily getting caught up in our own individual passion. But in the meantime, that individual passion of the moon in Sagittarius, wanting the truth, wanting to feel the truth and the big picture and connect to the collective values, has to start with a personal yearning that you get out of Scorpio. There's an understanding as a result of our journey underneath now that we bring back up, and we're like, okay, I want to merge, and to the point where it's like Cupid's arrow, right? You don't even have any control. It's just this urge to do it. And this can be really healing for the Chiron wound right now, because it is only when we step into what appears to be in opposition to us that we have true understanding. And true understanding is really the process of alchemy. And this is how we develop collective values. This is how we transmute and create a new version of ourselves. Okay, so the astrology today, moon moving into Sagittarius, there is going to be a lot of fire and passion as we move through the day. Okay, so let's look at this reading for today. I want to check in here with the chat, see how things are going, make sure the stream is going well. I am recording and now going to be posting on BitChute and Rumble and Odyssey. So if you're interested in alternative tech and you're not really too worried about being live necessarily, you'd rather support the alternative platforms, you can go and see all of these transmissions are going to be on those platforms too. So, and you will be able to access them, the links to them, from Telegram and from Facebook. So let's look here at, we're going to take this away and we're going to look at this reading for today. All right, guys, here we go. Our minds, this is the Mercury retrograde is pretty interesting. I'm still excited about it, but it's no joke, right? For as much as all of this Aquarian energy and how much it is about fixed air and the intellect and this laser focus and the mind's eye that allows us to really see very clearly, because Gemini is more about adaptability. You are mutable in your thinking, right? You're able to consider all of these possibilities. There's curiosity, and this is where the North Node is, right? This is where we are being drawn to in order for us to collectively evolve. And that is about being adaptable, being curious, allowing ourselves to consider multiple perspectives at any given time without really committing to anything. Aquarius is just, you're completely a container for this unconventional freedom. And it is the lightning bolt. And as you see at the top of this reading, that is exactly what is at the top of our awareness. And there is going to be this splitting that comes through into our awareness coming up. And like I said, it's going to be swift. It's going to be very swift. So a couple other things to point out, and we'll get into it, is that we have this 7 in terms of the 7 of Swords as the energy coming into the moment. We have, again, the initiation, the Count Saint Germain. Again, I mean, it really just brings home the point over and over and over how much of this process is initiating us into the highest version of ourselves. And this is the work that I do one-on-one in Catalyst, is guiding people and facilitating their own activation. And that happens over and over and over in the one-on-one work. Every time, right? We go into the chart, we go into the intuitive read, and it really is like this lightning bolt for people to realize and activate those dormant parts of them that have always been there, and they just needed a little bit of nudge or validation from the chart or the intuitive energy work to do so. But the initiation, again, it's number 14, so this is 7 times 2. So we have these 2 energies of 7 here that are very, very much part of this equation here. And 7 is that fall from grace, or it is that moment, that wild card moment that allows for divine intervention. Now, on top of that, we're going to see here, there is 3 8s in this reading. We have the 8 of Forces, the 8 of Wands, and the 8 of Scrolls. The 8 and 8 and 8. Wow, this is divine intervention to the max. Okay, to the maximum, right? There is going to be, and this is, again, it's going to be swift. It's going to be a swift transition from this wild card moment, the 7 of Swords, even the initiation in Count Saint Germain, because there has to be some sort of adjustment in order to move from the lower vibration thoughts and relationships and behaviors into, you have to make room for the higher self to come in fully. And boy, is it going to come in, and it's going to be fast. Okay, so this is the spread, and I'm curious if people are interested in having me post this in any social media, so you have access to it, and can come back to it. I think that wouldn't be a terrible idea, to just be able to come back to the spread at different points and be able to open it and zoom in on it throughout your day, or when you're like, I remember this part, I'm gonna go back and really focus on this card, because it's different for everybody what this imagery brings out. This is why archetypal work, Jungian psychology, depth psychology, I mean, this is the basis of the hero's journey, is the fact that we are embedded in our biological and mental structure with these archetypes. That was the basis of Jung's work. Anyway, so when you look at things like this, when you look at the cards, they bring out what is innate within each of us in terms of what we are meant to learn as we go along this path, okay? So let's get into it. Here's, the 7 of Swords, futility. So here's our 7. Boy, we are trying so hard to just trick ourselves into something, aren't we? We are trying so hard to use our mind and our intellect and our cleverness, right? And regardless of where you find yourself, everybody, to a certain extent, is trying to do this. And when we see futility here, you realize that no matter what we throw at it, there is a central point here that is, in fact, the reality of the situation, right? There's no getting around it despite our attempts at cleverly juggling all of these ideas, the mental gymnastics that we will engage in order to make things fit into our paradigm rather than being open to allowing that paradigm to shift. This is why the moon in Scorpio has been so important in the last couple of days, because we have gone into the cave, and that will shift your perspective when you come back out. So again, unmasking of illusions. And the sun today in Aquarius, in 18 degrees of Aquarius, 17 to 18, is a public figure being unmasked. And so even with all of our cleverness and trickery, it's a futile effort, no matter what. We come to, there's no escaping fate, right? And fate is nothing more than a cause and effect relationship, right? There is something we have done compared to what is happening right now, and then fate is the inevitable consequence, and there is no escaping fate. And this card is really about everything that we collectively have done to try to do that, and using our minds to do it. Unmasking of illusions and disguises. Now, something else about disguises, like I said, Venus and Saturn, they are both in the degree of Aquarius, about masked figures, in a mystery play, in a ritual, right? That is meant to release collective power, that we're all, all the world's a stage and we're all we're all players in some way, right? That Shakespeare quote. So, we've done everything we can, I think, on a collective level to really just try to trick ourselves, trick other people. And the sun today is about a public unmasking. And the sun is about how we identify ourselves. It is how we express ourselves. And so this can really, as we move through this transmission, you'll see that if we can align with that part of ourselves, it'll make it a lot easier, as opposed to continuing, right? Because Mercury is retrograde, and so it's not strong in terms of trying to initiate the mental gymnastics of this situation. Okay, so let's move forward, because where we're at the moment is the Queen of Cups. Now, this is totally different, right? Queen of Cups. So here we are, us, each individually as a Queen of Cups. This is the water of water, the purest manifestation of the soul of water, right? Pure emotion, pure passion, pure affection, never judgmental, never influenced by judgment or purpose. This is all just completely fluid, transferring and reflecting as well. As you can see in the card, you can barely see that there is a personified figure here. It is like a mirror that we, as this figure, we reflect back to others what they see in themselves. And we ourselves are completely, I don't want to say impressionable. That is definitely the possibility, but this is really about, instead of using our minds to try to make sense of everything, the cleverness, trying to maintain the illusion because it is becoming unmasked, regardless of what we think about it, and what we try to, contain it. This is much more about being a transformer. Now, and this is at the heart, right? This is the heart of the matter. This is in our heart, beingness. And this is about love and affection, right? Now, what is Aquarius but the water bearer, right? The water is the love and connection and the fluidness and the affection that is within the collective. Aquarius holds the water, okay? Now, what else is water? Water is a conductor of electricity. And what is lightning but a natural force of electricity? Now, this is at the top of our awareness, the 8 of forces, okay? The lightning bolt. This is where it gets swift, right? Because this is where the 8 starts. It is a time of splitting apart. Big time. Now look at this, right? The lightning comes down. It's going to split the tree. But if you look, the puddles, right? It's been raining. this is not going to be new. You can't determine or predict exactly where this lightning is going to strike, but what we can see is that it is not completely, the storm has been upon us for a while now, hasn't it? And it's time to accept the situation for what it is and not fight it. And the storm is here to cleanse us. And as we see with this puddle, that is how we know it's been raining. This is not like just came out of nowhere. This storm has been here upon us. And now this is the moment where the discharge of natural energy, of imbalance by nature, comes down and splits apart this tree, right? It is a time of splitting apart. And there's loss, there's disappointment, there is a metaphorical death, right? Here we are again with the moon in Scorpio, and the moon meeting Pluto on the 9th. And what is the 9th? That's the day of the impeachment trial, isn't it? We're aware of the threat, even though we have been unwilling to acknowledge it. There's that futility again. We've been unwilling to acknowledge it, even though it's everything else around us is showing us that it's been here. And now at the top of our awareness, there is going to be this kind of like lightning bolt awakening moment coming in, into our conscious awareness. Okay. Remember, water is a conductor of electricity. Aquarius is the water bearer. Uranus and Aquarius are the lightning bolt, right? The energy that is originally represented in Aries, right? Cardinal fire, the actual stream, the current, right? But Aquarius is that really quick, unconventional freedom. So it's going to be swift and it's going to be drastic and it's going to split some things apart. And as we saw with the initiation in Count Germain as one of the guidance points for this, this is part of the initiation into our higher selves, okay? And this is really for a lot of the starseeds right now, because this is going to be impacting, well, everybody, but I think most directly the starseeds. So beyond that, here is another 8, the 8 of Scrolls, paths unknown. Now, this is what is rooting us energetically. This is in the subconscious. This is what is grounding us. This is where we can connect to our root chakra, and more importantly, the Earth Star chakra. I have talked about this endlessly because this is how we connect to the fact that Gaia has already made this transition. Now we connect to this Earth Star chakra, which is about 3 feet or so below us. This allows us to connect into the network of the lattice structure, because now the Earth's core energetically has turned more into a crystalline structure. Diamond is all carbon, right? It's technically organic, but because of the fact that the carbon atoms are so tightly packed in, diamond is able to hold an incredible amount of heat. It has a piezoelectric effect, which means that energy like heat and electricity, for instance, can move along the surface of diamond. It's not a conductor of electricity, but the energy travels along the surface. This allows us to let energy move, but we're not embodying it. And so when we tap into the Earth Star chakra, we are tapping into a natural network that allows our field to also be more of this structure, which means we can not necessarily hold more energy, but we can allow more to move through us, which is essential as we are moving into a time when our solar system is moving into a part of the galaxy where there is just more photonic light in general. If we do not make this upgrade, we burn out our circuitry, and that is a big part of all of this right now. So when we tap into our subconscious, right, when we root ourselves energetically into the 8 of Scrolls, another 8, the paths unknown. So you can see here that there are 3 different paths. One is right in front of her, and she is, it's well lit, it's well traveled, she's probably been down it before. And we're talking about the mind and ideas because we're talking about the scrolls, okay? Each of these pathways has an animal guide as well. which is the squirrel, and then you have one to the right, which is, it's smaller. It looks like it hasn't been as traveled as much. It's kind of shadowed. It means there's more growth in there. It hasn't been, blazed very well. That's with the raccoon. And then there's one right behind her she's not even looking at, because she's looking at these two. And there's one more with the fox. And there's no sunlight there, and it's pretty dark. So we've been traveling a path that we have known for a long time. And there is a consideration at this moment of going down a different mental pathway. Again, with that seven of swords, we've been trying to trick ourselves, and it's a futile effort because the unmasking of illusions is upon us. And so now we have a choice. Which direction are we going to go? If we don't take a new path, we risk not catching new opportunities, right? If we're going to keep going down the same neural pathway, right, in our mind, then that's what we're going to keep getting. And when we have our illusions shattered and we don't make a choice to try a different pathway, this is some serious mental health problems. And with this lightning bolt coming in, this is destructive. It's important not to be attached to the fact that we've been down this pathway many, many times, and we have to be brave enough to step into the shadow. And I hope that if you've been doing the work about this, then this will be something that is not, I don't want to say it's not difficult, but you will have the bravery and the courage to go down a different pathway, or just to even turn around and be like, oh, I didn't even see that one there. This is where we are rooted. We are rooted energetically. And at the heart of this here is to be this transformer, right? To be the completely fluid conductor of this power in order for it to move through us. And we have to be willing to shift where that current, the pathway that current follows. Because it's not going to keep working to do the same one. That's pretty clear. We are moving into territory that is absolutely new. And if we keep trying to fit everything in the same paradigm box, it's not going to work. And this is where the lightning bolt is, the loss and the disappointment and the destruction is irreversible. And we don't realize that there are other ways to go about it. So let's see here, and then we go, here's the other 8. This is the outcome here, right? The 8 of Wands. The 8 of Wands, Mercury in Sagittarius, swiftness, decisive action, right? At a high speed. You can see it here. The lightning bolts coming out in every direction. They're very balanced, right? It's a very balanced geometrically. And you got the rainbow overhead that is suggesting a link between our divine self and our earthly vessel, right? Is the rainbow is the covenant, the covenant between us and God and divine source. It is the bridge, the celestial bridge. And so we're going to go over this bridge, and it's going to come quickly. And we're going to need to make a quick decision, decisive action, because that lightning bolt is going to come down. And, there is a sense of like, what should we do? But when it's time to make the decision, we better be ready to go. And it's all in our mind, right? All this Aquarian energy is all in our mind. The spirit needs to be free to fly. And that's a very Aquarian thing too, right? Is freedom, revolution, outside of the bounds of normal reality so that we can go into the future, and sudden realizations. There are going to be sudden realizations that come about as a result of this energy. And so we better be ready to hold that sudden realization. Again, if we are still going down the same pathway that we've been going down, we're not going to be able to, it's a futile effort. That's the 7 of Swords. It's futile. We're not going to get the same, that is insanity, right? Expecting the same result, and doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We have to actually do something different if we want to expect a different result. And it's gonna happen swiftly. It's going to be, it's going to be, I don't know how else to say it. It's just going to happen very quickly. And it's going to be a swift mental jolt, and it will require decisive action in a mental capacity on our part. With a Mercury in retrograde, this is not going to be easy. So this is going to have to be something that we internally are able to hold. as well. It may not come out directly into the sphere of communication and the sphere of ideas and thoughts and information, but it may be much more about that area within us, okay? Now, as I said, the guidance here for a lot of this, especially with that lightning bolt, like, again, initiation, the Count Saint Germain, just keep in mind that that is going to be an awakening moment, right? And initiating us into our higher selves. And this has come up so many times. I can't even tell you how many times this card has come out in the last week and a half. We are on the precipice of this really big shift, okay? And along with that, in terms of the guidance here with our animals, is the meerkat. Get support from a trusted group of like-minded friends, okay? It's going to be important that we know who we can communicate with, that we trust the people that we communicate with, and we are engaged with the people who speak our language, okay? Not to say we should stay in a bubble, that is not to say that we should stay in a bubble and not reach out to different thought forms. That's the whole point of the Eight of Scrolls, is going down unknown paths. But this is about knowing who your people are and being able to support each other, because we're all going to go through this together, okay? And community is really important. Now, when it comes to the paths unknown, this is an interesting connection here that I'm still trying to work out. So maybe it'll come through as maybe I'll be able to channel it a little bit as we go through, because this is about staying in the background and adapting to the situation than being conspicuous. I would say attempting to direct the course of events is probably the way to think about this, because again, the futility of using our minds to try to force anything into a particular position. Maybe we want to keep walking down that pathway that we have already done a billion times and it gets wiped out. Or maybe we're trying to fit down there. Maybe it's about not being conspicuous about it. Maybe it's not about hiding. It's about focusing in on our own process at the moment, okay? Rather than trying to, go out there and again, Mercury is retrograde. So it's not really about like communicating outwards and like having that conversation necessarily. It's more about our internal process and not being conspicuous and trying to force things, right? And trying to trick ourselves into believing something, or trick ourselves into, seeing something that's not there. It's interesting, the blending in situation. And again, it might be important and necessary to take a step back. And this is why it's important to know who your people are, right? Who you can trust, and not put yourself out there necessarily so much that you end up becoming a target. As you are figuring out what direction you want to be going. And along with that, the architect, remember that we are actually building the reality that we want. The keys are the physical manifestation. They're the nuts and bolts of reality, our material world. And we are in charge, right? We're in charge of that. And it's time to step into our power. It's time to step into our position of power, and recognize our strengths, our talents, and take authority to change our own lives. And again, this is just the very beginning. The architect is the designer. So, and they direct the flow of the building. So we're not fully taking this path is really just the very beginning. Taking a new path, taking a new mental pathway is just the beginning. It's not the end at this point. And this is again why it may be important to take a step back and not be conspicuous. I mean, yes, this architect is directing the course of events to a certain extent, but there's a difference between what's on the blueprint and what actually shows up. And so at this point, everything's still on the page, right? It's still on the scroll. It has yet to be actually built into real form. And so we still have to work with our mental capacity, because thoughts create things, right? Ideas manifest through the magician. And so we're just at the beginning of this. as a society, as a collective, and trying to force it in any way is probably not going to work in our favor. Again, we want to be fluid and receptive and a transformer, right? We want to be a vessel, the water. We want to be able to hold the energy that's going to come in, and let that direct the flow of where our minds go, and know that this is the beginning of a process and not the end of one. Okay, so that's the transmission for today. I do believe it's Friday, so I'll see you all on Monday, which will be what's Monday? Monday is the 8th. Okay, and I'll be back for a transmission on that day. I encourage you to check out the weekly astrology report on Medium. Like I said, it's in the description box below. You can link to it and get a sense of what to expect as we get into this very end of this lunar cycle that started before the inauguration. So a lot has happened since then, and we are, in fact, fulfilling an intention of committing ourselves to our own transcendence. And that does impact the entire world that we're part of as well. But it does start with us. So take care, everybody. I love you so much. I'm going to check in with the chat real quick. Hi, Meg. It's good to see you. I love all your emojis. It's great that you're here, and we can all be together. So thanks for being here. I really just appreciate this work so much. Let me know if you're interested in a reading, and I will see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye.